Right, so yesterday what we did was the rear wheel. So we took it fully apart, re-greased the axle here, put it all back together. Today what we're going to do is actually work on the freewheel. So I let it sit in the ultrasonic cleaner for about a cycle and a half, and then I took it out. You see it looks really nice. You can hear it. Sounds fine, but now there's literally nothing in there to stop the wear. So you could do a few things. You can put in a lube. We live in a dry climate here, so I usually use like a dry lubricant. You really want to use something that's specific for a freewheel or the cassette itself. So what we're going to do is just take it apart and put some grease in it. So to take it apart, what you want to do, there's actually two little notches in here, and then you want to remove this. The problem is this spins in the direction you need to remove it, which is clockwise. So the way that you actually get it undone is you mount it to the wheel, then you use a little punch and a hammer to loosen it. While it's loose, you then take it off, and then from there you'll have access to the bearings. There's a set of bearings up here, and then there's another set of bearings down at the bottom. So there's going to be a lot of bearings. I have everything pretty much set up here. What I like to do is take the top off, separate the top bearings from the bottom bearings. That way you don't have to worry about the counts. And then so much as the size as well, in case they're different. They're typically the same size though. So I'm going to get it mounted up, and then what we'll do is we'll take everything apart. Alright, so I have it remounted. Now what we're going to use is I have this old bent little, I think it was a screwdriver at one point. You could tell there's a little bit of a bend in it. I'm going to put it here up against this pin, and then I'm going to use a small hammer just to drive it around. Once it starts moving, we'll take the freewheel back off the wheel, and then we'll set it down so we could take off the cover and then get the bearings out. This one was pretty loose already. Alright, so it's already loose. Don't want to risk any of the bearings falling out. So let me pause. Alright, had to put the freewheel remover tool in. Forgot to pull it out of the drawer. And of course the phone stand is now blocking it. So I'm going to put this on. It's going to come off pretty easily. And again, be very careful because now everything on the freewheel is loose. You don't want the bearings to fall at the back. You don't want the bearings to fall at the front, obviously. So as I get it closer here to coming on, I'm actually going to just turn it here, move over a little bit. I should be pretty close now. And we're off. So move this out of the way, put this down. Okay, so I got everything taken apart. I'm just going to remove this cap here. Again, you have to be very careful. At this stage, it's very easy for bearings to go flying. So there's no bearings here on the top. Nothing got stuck, so I'm just going to set that aside. And then you can see inside here, these are where all the bearings are going to be. So again, don't really want to try and count them right now. It's going to be a lot to count. I don't have a magnetic tool. So one thing you can do, again, extremely careful here. I'm going to hold the bottom together and I'm going to flip it. So I put all the bearings up to the side here. I'm going to very carefully reflip it just to make sure nothing's stuck. There's no bearings left here, so all the bearings I have set aside already, those are going to be the top bearings. So they're all here. I'm going to move them all to the side here off camera, and then we'll get the bottom bearings. So I have all the top bearings are secure and in a group now. So I'm going to flip it, carefully set it down, and then now I'm going to lift the outer shell out. Make sure there's no bearings stuck in here. Looks good. And then this is the bottom. So the bottom here, these are all the bearings that are going to go here. You could tell that they sit on a tiny little race at the bottom. And then I'll lift this up here in a second once I get the bearings out to show you the pawls and how the pawls actually ratchet inside the housing there. So I'm just going to very carefully take these off. What's great about putting these through the ultrasonic cleaner at this point is that there's no grease or any other grime potentially that's going to stick and hold the bearings, so don't really have to worry about them falling or running around the shop here just because there's nothing there anymore. So I'm going to show you here, these are the pawls. They're spring action, so there's a tiny little spring that goes around this part here, and that's what actually makes it go up and down. So there's some spacers here as well. We want to make sure we don't lose those. In terms of the grease that we're about to do, you don't want to grease the pawls, because if you put grease here, it could stick and keep it from springing back up. So what we typically do is just put a little bit of lubricant there. Those pawls sit inside here, and you can see the different channels. So when you pedal backwards, it's ratcheting, and that's that sound you hear. It's like click, 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 click. And then once you pedal forward, the spring pushes it up into these channels. So you can see there's two of them here. They oppose each other, and then that's what actually pushes you forward. So that's how the Freewheel works. A cassette and the free hub body are very similar. The mechanism is just attached to the hub instead of here on the gears. So what I'm going to do is take our grease gun, so the mini grease gun. I'm going to put a bead of grease just around the bottom, like what was there originally when it was manufactured. We'll put the bottom bearings back on, put the top housing, put grease in the top, put the bearings, and then put it all back together. So we'll just start doing that now. Probably help if I show it on camera. Yeah, it's not a perfect bead. I think I'm running low on grease in the gun here, so I'm kind of struggling to push it. But this should be enough just to hold them in place. So the grease is going to help keep water out. It's going to lubricate, obviously. And then in this case, it's also going to help us reassemble, because the grease is going to hold the ball bearings in place while we go around. So you can use a bunch of different things. I usually just shove them on with my finger here. I think tweezers are a good option. I had tweezers, I cannot find them. Probably have to go steal some of my wife's, but for now I can just use my fingers. So you're just gonna work your way around the edge. Alright, so I ended up just finishing it off camera, but this is what it looks like with the bearings put around the edge there. I added a little bit of lubricant to the pawl, so those are ready to go. Now what we're gonna do is put the rest of it back on. So again, this is going to go down like this, and then what we'll do is we'll grease the race in here, put the rest of the bearings, put it back together, and then that's pretty much it. So I'm going to try and carefully put it on without losing any bearings. There we go. Now to check, I'm going to pull up with my index finger here. I want to make sure we didn't lose any bearings. So it feels good, nothing's hard, meaning that there's a bearing. And now what we're going to do is just complete the rest of it. So this part's easier because now I don't have to worry about the bearings falling off or running around. So I'm just going to squirt some grease in here. Again, the grease is going to help lubricate, keep them in place, which isn't as important for this part of the operation. But it also helps keep water out, prevent the rust, so it's beneficial in a lot of different regards. So I'm going to just start adding them in here. I dropped one. This is why you want to work on a surface where you can see everything. Again, if you have like tweezers or something you could place them in with, it's going to be easier and you don't have to worry about necessarily rolling them around. That's why I want the microfiber, because then I can see the color if anything falls down. The tabletop here is a stainless steel, and of course with stainless steel on steel, you're not going to be able to see anything. So I want to have a differentiating color. So I'm going to finish putting these in, and then we'll close it up. Okay, so I have everything back in there. Now what we're going to do is just replace the top. So it's the same operation as when we put it on, except now we're going to go in reverse. So this is reverse threaded. If you remember from earlier, to loosen it, we were going clockwise. Now we're going to go counterclockwise. Get that pushed in. All right. Then I'm just going to hit it with the punch here while it's on the table. Might shake the video. Okay, I'm gonna work the grease in. Let me take the zoom out here. Just work the grease around. You want to hear that ratcheting sound at this point because that means the pawls aren't being gummed down by anything. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I like to add just a little bit of the dry lubricant around the top. I think what this really does is it just helps work in some of those other parts to flow the grease around to it. It's already starting to move a bit more freely. And that's about it. So what I'm going to do is wipe this off so it doesn't attract too much dirt and grime, put it back on the wheel, and then we'll be done with this part. Alright, so I have the rear wheel here. What we're going to do is add a little bit of grease to the threads where the freewheel goes. Again, the grease is going to help keep water out. It's also going to keep the two parts from seizing together. There's been a few times where I have to get a breaker bar to get these things off. So I'm going to put this on. You want to be sure you're not cross-threading it, so be very careful. Okay, there we go. So it should go on very smoothly. And you can just hand tighten the freewheel. As you pedal forward, it's actually going to tighten it more onto the hub, so you don't really need to worry about getting it too tight here. Your pedaling action will do that for you. If you have a cassette, you're going to want to use the actual tightening tool for the ring and everything. So that's pretty much it now. So the next thing we'll do is probably go through the front fork. We'll probably rebuild the suspension there, re-grease the headset bearings and everything, but this is it. So it's looking pretty good. This is the first video with the new phone stand, so hopefully it's a little bit better quality. And yeah, looking forward to it. This is a lot of fun.